Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. Philippe and I are going to be talking about how you can help monetize the content in your archive. I'm Josh, the CRO of Coactive AI, joined by Philippe Guegan, who is the product development lead at Festiverse, which is a brand within Live Nation's sponsorship team. So a little bit about Coactive. We are a software company that helps you use AI in order to understand and monetize every moment in your archive. And joined by Philippe here from Festiverse. Can you tell us a bit about Festiverse?
That's right, yeah. Well, Festiverse is about fan engagement around music festivals, hence the name, obviously. It came to be in a sort of funny way, because after COVID, all the apps, all the tools for fan engagement at music festivals were actually cancelled. We were in like cost-cutting mode because of COVID, and no festival had their app anymore. And we found ourselves with like this sort of empty landscape, and we had the opportunity to create like one single app, a multi-festival app that can be used for multiple festivals. So economies of scales and also on. So we essentially provide a platform or an app platform for festivals, music festivals. Like we have about 35 festivals in the US on the platform. You can download it on the App Store. Long introduction, sorry.
Thanks, Philippe. So today, one of the things we're going to talk a lot about is how you bring context to content. AI is incredible. AI can unlock tremendous value, and it can't do it without having your specific context. And so we're gonna just keep kind of coming back to that idea again and again. So think about your archive today. The reason you have an archive, whether you're a publisher, you're a brand, you're an agency, you're a sports league, you're a news organization, is because you understand that it has tremendous value. There's something that you want to do with it. It builds over time. That's why you store it. But that storage comes with a cost, right? It comes with a cost. It's sitting across these fragmented locations. Sometimes it may be sitting in tape decks in New Jersey. I'm sure the Live Nation team can relate to that.
Yeah, we have a lot of tapes in a lot of cupboards. Absolutely.
So you look at this, you think about moving it around and transporting, all this stuff has cost to it. And then you go and evaluate all these things that you want to do with your projects, right? What can you do with that archive? And you have a million ideas, but you look at each project as a standalone, right? And so each one, you think about a new vendor that can help you, and it requires ingesting that content. It has a new cost associated with it. And so when you add it up, though, each kind of per project that you look at, the economics just don't pencil out. Yet, you know that AI is here, that it can unlock this massive value. I'm not sure, how many of you in the audience are familiar with the concept of vector embeddings, but they're this wonderful, powerful tool that I like to think of as almost as like content DNA. It helps create a numerical representation of your content, so you no longer have to do the old process of tagging content and then loading it and trying to search it. These machines can now understand what's in the content. And what it does is it creates essentially a multi-dimensional graph of text, of image, of video, of audio, and puts it together in a way that you can understand it. So if you're the Festiverse, you might have content that has things like crowds in it, or stages and performances, or sponsor activities, or food and merchandise, right? Every single moment and shot and scene can now be categorized in this way. The problem is when you start looking again at that archive, marketing team thinks, I've got a great idea. I can promote this content and drive more people to festivals. The sponsorships team thinks, if only I could report on to all my sponsors, the exposure that they had. You've got an editorial team that wants to write about the festival, and they think it'd be great if I could pull the content from all these festivals, and maybe from past festivals that related to it. You've got your research and analytics team that wants to look at it and understand all sorts of different elements of how the fans may be queued up in lines. Maybe you want to change the way that those flow through the experience so that you can improve, fan experience. You've got brand safety team that wants to know how certain stages and equipment were set up. So all of these things are valuable, but if they get looked at across the cost of bringing that content online and making it available and scanning it, each project gets failed, right? So what we're going to talk about today is kind of a real-world example how you can think about your archive as a compounding asset, right? And if you take that cost and you can distribute it across all of these different projects that you have, the marginal cost for each one comes down. right? And yet the value that you can extract accumulates more and more over time and starts to actually compound on itself. So you can create new experiences. You can actually release that new micro drama that you want to create, or that new compilation video, that new fan experience can now be unlocked. So where it starts with is actually understanding what AI you should use, and being able to like have each business unit that you're using bring their own context to that content. There's a lot of different AI models out there. Some of them look at just text. Some of them combine multiple modalities together. So you have, image and video and audio. And then the newest ones are actually called native video models. And what they do is they can actually understand content or video from a temporal nature. So what happened over time. The best of these is actually Amazon Nova. But the reason I can say that is our company created something called MediaPerf, which is the industry's first video understanding model that looks at media and entertainment foundation models in real world settings. So if you actually ran workloads in it, what's the price performance of those workloads over time? And Nova performed the best in that. So, Chris, Philippe, why did you select?
That was actually the reason, like TCO, total cost of ownership, and really in terms of like transferring our archive, we had like quite a massive volume. That was essentially like, the most effective, the best value for money, I guess is the best way to put it. High quality and best price.
And did you use the content that you have in the festivals? Were they used to train the Amazon Nova model? My guess is not.
No, absolutely. It's, the beauty of these models is that they are already pre-trained to a lot of things. And, that's something we're going to discuss maybe towards the end of the presentation, but in a lot of scenarios, you actually take your foundational model, your original model, but then you have to do like a lot of training, a lot of, additional work. And that work is not just time, it's also cost to actually fine tune the model to your needs. And in this case, well, with Amazon Nova, we have something that is kind of like, one shot. From the get-go, it knows what we need. So obviously, there are some domain-specific requirements that we need to address that are not always recognized by the model, and that's the additional dimension. So not everyone organizes their content the way we do. We organize our content by festivals, by sponsor, by food shots. You kind of saw that on the cluster chart that you had earlier. So we have like a certain taxonomy that we apply to all this content. And I guess this is an example. So this is not directly festival. This is connected festival. It's actually a division that we work with at Live Nation, which is called Wants to Watch, and they work with emerging artists. When we say emerging artists, artists like Dua Lipa or Billie Eilish were actually alumni of this thing, like 10 years ago, or yeah. So everybody starts small and then become like a big star. Not all of them, but some really make it big. With Wants to Watch, that's the same idea. We have like a completely different type of taxonomy in this case, a completely different organization, because they do like a lot of miniseries, YouTube shows, podcasts that are not necessarily part of the content of the festivals. So I just wanted to show you, this is, by the way, AWS Media Lake. That's the interface we actually use to navigate the content that is stored and indexed in Coactive. And we use that for festival. We use that for Wants to Watch. There's a few other things that we are looking at. Cannot speak about it, but we are going to expand that to other parts of the business as well. And this is essentially the backbone to organize the content. And each team, each division has its own way to organize their content, which with Media Lake was made like, you just essentially configure the way you want to see the content, and it automatically kind of feels that way and organizes itself that way.
Wonderful. So let's move to the Festiverse application, Philippe. Can you tell us a little bit about how it was designed, kind of for its initial use cases, and then we'll get into kind of how you're thinking about bringing it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that post-COVID there was no music festival app for a lot of the festivals that had been cut. And we came in to fill that sort of fan engagement gap. And we started in year one. Last year was year one. We started with, the basic, the utility, like making sure that people could find their schedule. People could personalize their schedule, share the schedule with their friends, look at the map. And now we're in year two. And we're trying to go one step beyond and go into further engagement that goes not just during the short time before and during the festival, but have something that engages people on a longer period of time. And for that, video and this archive is actually one of our secret weapons, or at least one of the levers that we are going to use.
All right, so as you think about moving forward, we talked a little bit about the fan engagement aspect, but can you tell us some more of the use cases that we're building with you along with AWS and Amazon Nova?
Yeah, I think that with Media Lake and Coactive, we have this incredible behind-the-scene productivity story. Essentially, think about it. We have, like, for example, a festival where there are like hours and hours and hours of concert. And at the end of the day, we have to produce like recaps that are going to go on social media. And it's essentially a race against time. The editor has like only a few hours because, you want to send that as soon as possible after the end of the show. And you cannot have like 8 hours, 10 hours to do an edit. So one thing we're putting in place, and we're starting we are currently piloting it, and we're going to go into production on a more regular scale, starting in June, is to use Media Lake and Coactive to actually automate and speed up the video editing process. So let me make that a bit more tangible for you. What we can do with AI is that essentially, when we start to ingest the video in Media Lake and Coactive, we can actually add sort of metadata to say, okay, we recognize the name of the song. We can actually go into Spotify to understand how many streams this song has, and we can look at a set of artists, and it's like, okay, so now we can rank all these different songs, and now we can say, okay, well, I really want to only select content from these top 3 most popular songs from this artist, from my compilation. Another thing that we can do is so that we can put a music analyzer, and we can start to understand, as part of these video segments, we can understand what is the intro of a song, what is the chorus of a song. So the video editor can essentially go and, at the end of the day, say, okay, I want to prepare a compilation for this stage, and I want to focus on the most popular song, and I want to focus on the chorus. And all this content is going to come via Media Lake and Coactive, and we can then send that into a video editor like Premiere, which it can be compiled. If you think about it, before, it was essentially all of a manual work. Like, somebody had to essentially be on call and sort of like either look at every show while they go live and take note at the same time, or, they take hours and hours after the show to do these compilations. So in terms of the second use case that we're talking here, in terms of the production for then distribution into social channels, we have like an incredible productivity boost.
So that's great. So the first one is really helping, it sounds like, fans find their content faster through kind of search and discovery and creating a new experience. And then helping internal teams do the same thing, using the same set of assets to help them to clip them together, to produce a lot faster, to be able to find their content and accelerate workflows, and ultimately to promote fans to come to the next concert. And let's start with the last one. I think it's interesting. Yeah. And this really hits to me on the idea of context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So obviously, in music festivals, you have like a lot of sponsors. That's part of the economic model of festivals. And it's very important for us to measure, analyze, understand the visibility and the exposure that the sponsors are getting. And if we go to the next slide, I think that it will make things a lot more tangible on how we can use something like Media Lake and Coactive to actually, well, let's say that in this case, we have like a beer brand that is one of the sponsors, and we can then do a simple manual search that will extract all the sequence, all the segment where the brand has appeared, whether it's actually as part of, an activation, whether it's actually as part of the naming of a stage, whether it's like in this case, one of the artists drinking that beer.
I think what's important too, when you think about AI and what it's doing under the hood, it's, able to identify things like this moment. You're taking a person and you're combining it with an action and an object and bringing that all together to be able to find the exact moment. I mean, this is a 5-second clip inside of hundreds of thousands of minutes of content. And you can see how, if you see on the search results there, it's ranked semantically by the one that's the best fit to what you're looking for. And if you see there's other ones in there that you could understand why they would come up. It's Young Gravy on a microphone. It's Young Gravy, maybe he's drinking something else. It's Young Gravy doing things that semantically are similar to it, but may or may not be this. You want to, be able to surface the best result for it. And this is search. And then you go for it on thinking about, you want to report this out to all the sponsors. You'll be able to bring in metadata and turn this into structured content. And this is really where Coactive shines, is helping you define what that context is so that you can separate Young Gravy drinking a Budweiser from Young Gravy picking up a microphone when it looks like maybe he has a drink. And so when you go back and you report to your sponsors, you can say, hey, he was on stage, he did it in this moment, he did it one time. But we're also going to be able to find every moment where Bud Light showed up on a pillow or showed up at the vendor stand, or maybe it was in the back of Govball and there's a big sign that said Bud Light, and be able to count the total exposure. So again, you really want to be able to make sure that you can train that without having to go spend, and actually build your own models. You have to be able to use the models that you have and bring your context to them. So the way that we do this is content is stored in AWS, your favorite cloud provider. And the first thing you want to do here is not have to move the content. So Coactive gets read-only access to this content, which is important. Any type of content. It could be your video content, images, archive, user-generated content that's loaded. It could also be associated metadata to it. It doesn't matter if it's in its raw form, its finished product. So you think about the DAMs and MEMS that are out there today. You almost have like a separate one for your work in process, one for your final, and all these things sit in all these isolated places. Coactive believes that you need a content intelligence layer that sits between all of these, all of the content that you have, and all of the applications and use cases that you want. So once we've read the content, we then help prepare it for AI. It turns out the content itself is not always ready. A 4K video, AI models are using 360p, and they're downsampling anyway. They're bringing to different formats. There's different chunking strategies. Nova, which is a great model, chunks at 30-second intervals. You might have shots that are actually less than 30 seconds. So Coactive developed a pipeline to send either the shot or a 30-second interval to Nova, which improves the context that the system has. You then want to be able to store it in a location. So have your content artifacts, your vector embeddings, your related metadata all put together and build context on top of it. And then a lot of the work that our PhD co-founders did was to be able to create a classification system that sits on top of the embedding layer. Again, I know this is maybe a bit technical, but what it essentially allows you to do is to create a tag such as female empowerment or an epic sponsor moment or social diversity defined to how each of the different sponsors might think about it without having to retrain your content, without having to rescan the content. So from a cost perspective, you scan it once and you can power all these things. And then the services that we put on top of it are search. You can find your content and power things like editorial workflows, the marketing use cases, the fan experience. You can enrich it for stuff like content recommendations, measurement, contextual advertising, right? As well as analytics to create insights from all this data together. And then ultimately it powers different experiences. So now we're sending this data into your favorite UI, which in this case is Media Lake, where they're performing social media marketing and the Festiverse experience. And then also sending that same data and access into other places. They can do sponsorship reporting, doing brand safety, video editing downstream. You think to add to that, Philippe, in terms of how you're using it?
No, I think what we like about one of the main reasons, which was Media Lake, is really the fact that it's open source, very modular. We can customize it to our exact needs, and we can really expand on it. Right now, it's mostly and essentially at the core storage platform, but it's really evolving for us in our use case into something that is really the sort of connecting tissue for a lot of workflows. So there is this dimension of workflows for, content coming in, content coming out, automatic editing that we are starting to add. And one of the reasons we can do that is essentially that open source and modularity. You couldn't do that. You could look around. There's obviously like a lot of digital asset management solutions, but there's probably none that can be customized to the degree of Media Lake.
So for anybody else who wants to start to monetize their archive, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over time? And
hard-won lessons, yes. Well, I think the point you were making at the beginning, which is really this archive is not just one team's archive, right? It's everybody's content. Once that content is available to a lot of people, there's like a flurry of new use case that can start, and you have to really think about not silos of teams using that type of content. You have to really think about like all your content has to go digital, has to be sort of indexed and embedded, and then everybody can actually leverage it. And I think that's a philosophical difference in terms of how a lot of people usually approach this kind of projects. They really approach it with that narrow use case. Here you have to almost think like it's infrastructure. You are going to put in place content or context infrastructure that can be then leveraged by anybody in the enterprise. So that's number one. Number two, POCs. I mean, I'm smiling because we POCs in the age of AI, it's a completely obsolete notion at this point. We did a POC for a completely different project, not video related, but focused on AI. And by the time we finished the POC, we had like one of the main AI provider had already like done what we wanted to achieve was part of the standard feature. So don't even think POC anymore, right? The pace at which things are changing and evolving in this age of AI you have to go, try something, evolve it, grow upon it, build upon it, and the POC is dead. RIP POC, I guess, is
for sure. And I think maybe a corollary to that is when we were running our POC with Live Nation, we actually then built the integration along with the Media Lake team into Coactive, so that we knew when we were ready to move to production that the system would be ready to go. Right, so it wasn't throwaway work that we were doing. We were testing the pipelines. We were making them production ready while we were, assessing and making sure that the business value was there. We knew that we could start the moment that we were able to demonstrate that, which was able to move very quickly. How do you think about partners? Like, I think it's how do you evaluate the model? How do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, there's two dimensions to that. I mean, the first dimension obviously is the foundational model. We discussed that earlier, which was AWS Nova. Again, I'm going to repeat it. Value for money, high quality, low cost, cannot beat that. So that one was pretty straightforward. You guys have like a tool, a benchmarking tool, that allows to actually evaluate all these dimensions for video models. So cost, quality, I mean, maybe you can say a bit more about that.
Yeah, of course. I think one of the things that we think about too is scale. A lot of the times we see it's a flashy demo, even in the POC where it's a small subset of content. We work with brands obviously like Festiverse that has a tremendous amount of content, but like think about NBCU's Peacock and they have 9 million minutes of content. How do you take and tag an asset like that at every shot level with a high degree of confidence and do it in minutes, and then be able to iterate on that in minutes? Like the content is just a massively larger asset than structured data, and you need to have systems in place that can handle it in a way that your kind of traditional systems that you're using haven't necessarily contemplated. So again, it's like AI is great, but it still have to have the big data principles around it that previously, and I think that some people are sort of ignoring at this time because they see something flashy and see something cool, and you really have to make sure you're thinking about the full system and how it works together. And maybe you can talk a little bit around, I think, to me, is actually the hardest thing that I've seen organizations get through is the change management.
Change management. I was going to talk about infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot of things. Very briefly, like there's a lot of vendors who talk the talk, and I mean, again, you walk those aisles, and you will see like a lot of media management system. There's a lot of people who talk the talk, but when you scratch the surface, they don't necessarily walk the walk. And you really have to do a thorough evaluation before making a commitment. I mean, and that evaluation, it goes from, we talked about cost again. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a very key thing, but, it's about like the product roadmap, the product vision. Where is that platform or that infrastructure going to go in the future? How easily accessible is it for end users? That's actually a very, very important aspect in adoption. I mean, I could go on. We have a bit of a time constraint, so let's talk about organizational readiness, because at the end of the day, that's probably the one that makes or breaks any project, not just, with video, with IT in general, but technology changes a lot faster than people. And I mean, we're in 2026, that is like even more than 5 years ago.
I laugh. Our field CTO and co-founder did an AI training for us on Wednesday, and Friday it was outdated. It's just
True story.
It's just unbelievable the pace at which this is happening now. But for me, one of the things about change management that's so important is just making sure that you like the teams that you work with. And Philippe, it is an absolute pleasure working with you, as well as the AWS team and the Amazon Nova team. Has just been tremendous. So
yep.
Thank you so much for taking the time today and with us. If any of you would like to connect, feel free to reach out on email. I've also put my LinkedIn up there. We'd love to show you how we can help you bring context to content. So thank you so much.